Wait, what? Could you say that again, Mr. Dungeon Master, sir? My most favoriteest Dungeon Master in the whole wide world?
I said the Drow Swordmaster slashes you twice for 52 points of damage, and you're dead. Your body crumples to the ground, and a pool of blood slowly begins to grow around it.
But
Sucks to be you. And then the Drow Swordmaster action surges and turns his attention to the druid, who is conveniently out of wild shapes for the day.
Wait, what? Oh, heck yeah! This is what I'm talking about! TPK, baby!
Now you do know that if we TPK, you'd be dying too, right?
indeed, we'd all be dying, including you, the rogue.
Well, that sucks. Well, I guess it's time for some stabby on that drow then. Holy crap! That was amazing! It was like the best battle ever! Right, guys? Hey, right, guys? Guys? Oh, wow, I guess I'll just be doing all of these skits by myself now.
There he was, the Black Mage. My youngling players had fought hard to get to this point. They had found the secret door, concealing the lever that had opened the portcullis. They had fought and defeated the Stone Golem Guardian in the outer chamber. And then, in the jail cells, they had encountered many maud, gelatinous gibbering mouthers locked behind impenetrable force fields. Of course, the force fields dropped midway through the chamber, leaving them surrounded and in a pitched battle, though they ultimately dispatched the wretched creatures. Then, when they attempted to take a short rest in the middle of the Black Mage's compound and were ambushed by bugbear assassins, they not only defeated their assailants, but took several captive and convinced those bugbears to aid them, on pain of death, of course. So yes, they had earned their way to the Black Mage's audience hall, and they now found themselves locked in a life or death battle with a foe far beyond their pay scale. What business did a group of level 5 adventurers have going up against a Skull Lord, a CR-15 creature second only in power to a true Lich? What business did their dungeon master have pitting a group of 4 teenagers against an enemy that would likely defeat them all, blasting their precious characters into dust? What business, indeed. Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Lucar, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. Today in the Lair, we'll be talking about character defeat, death, and total party kills, or TPKs, and why they're good for the game. Let me start off by asking you a question. Have you ever read a series of books that featured protagonists, you know, the heroes, that were pretty much invincible? Now, I love R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms books. In fact, this book here is what began my love for Dungeons and Dragons back in middle school before I even started playing the game. However, you will notice over the course of reading all the books in that series that the protagonists are pretty much unkillable. That is, they always win. Like, always. And you know what that does when the heroes always win? It makes the story less interesting. You're not really on the edge of your seat that much because you know that in the end, the good guys will win and they'll all be alive. No deaths, no losses, no defeats, just your standard happy ending, and then it's on to the next book. And I have the same complaint with Robert Jordan's books, invincible protagonists that in the end always win. And I will try really hard here not to rant about how in Jordan's books basically nothing happens in the first 800 pages And then the last 200 pages are amazing and full of non-stop action. Like really, why? Why? But then you have these books. Do you know why R.R. Martin's books are so incredibly stomach-wrenching and difficult to put down? Do you know why the battles and situations are so much more dramatic and engaging? Do you know why the readers are terrified when their favorite characters get into bad situations? Because R.R. Martin is not afraid to kill or even horribly maim protagonists in his books. And when you know that death is really on the line and your favorite character could actually die and be dead, not just in the hands of a demon for a bit and then later get rescued, those battles and bad situations are so much more engaging. And then the subsequent victories are that much more meaningful. You see, victories are so much more rewarding when you know that failure was actually a possibility. And this same principle applies to Dungeons & Dragons games. Recently, in my Ancient Dragon campaign that I play with a few patrons, they picked up a seemingly simple quest from the Xanathar to take care of a few drow spies that had holed up in a shack down in Dockward. It wasn't a complex quest. The shack was simple. I actually didn't even create a map for it, and we ran it theater of the mind. And there was only one encounter: 4 male drow soldiers and 1 female drow swordmaster. In fact, I as the dungeon master spent all of 10 minutes creating that mission, that mini adventure. However, tracking down the drow, confronting and battling them, and cleaning up the mess afterwards comprised the bulk of the game session. And afterwards, my players were posting in our private Discord channel about how amazing the session was and how much fun they had. And do you know why? Do you know why a mini adventure that I honestly spent very little time planning was so successful? Because it was an insanely difficult battle. 3 of the 5 characters went down on the ground, dying at one point or another. And the drow swordmaster had smashed a darkness pellet, shrouding the area in darkness so that no one knew where she was, nor which character was next on the chopping block. It was tense, and I'm sure my players were thinking they would all die in that battle. But they didn't, of course. They eventually won. So why was it so tense for them? Why did they actually feel that death was on the line, that they might actually die? Because they know that I'm capable of it. I have proven to them that I'm not going to save their skins. They know that other groups have TPK'd in my games, and one of their own characters, Fizzletalk, has died before. You see, they believe that the threat of death is real in my games. And so when they do win, when victory is achieved after a long, hard battle, that victory is all the sweeter. One of my friends was telling me a story once about how he was going to run Dungeons & Dragons for some family members that had come over to his house for the holidays. And one of the players, before the game even started, made a comment along the lines of this:
"If you kill my character, I will rage quit the game, so don't even go there."
And I think that's completely ridiculous. I mean, this is Dungeons and Dragons. You're role-playing a squad of elite warriors who constantly enter the fray of combat and the dangers thereof. Life and death is always on the line. Don't you think that eventually, maybe, just maybe, your characters might die? And I'm gonna be honest here. If someone can't emotionally handle the death of a character in a game, then how can such a person possibly be expected to cope with the stress and pressures of real life? So let's go back to my youngling players. They're all teenagers, around 14 years old, give or take, and I do not hold back on them. Multiple characters have died in our games, and they've had to roll up replacements. They know that death in the game is a possibility, and they deal with it. Sure, it might be stressful at times. Sure, they might lose a character they are attached to. But if they can't learn to cope with these sorts of situations in a game, then I shudder to think how they'll do when they get out into the real world and have to deal with real situations, real pain, and real loss. So there my youngling players were, squared off against the Black Mage, a skull lord far beyond their capabilities. Only teamwork, strong fortitude, and steel-like determination would see them through this battle. But they did not exhibit teamwork. As the battle unfolded with the Black Mage laying down a cone of cold and a subsequent cloud kill spell that horribly wounded them all, two players, instead of fighting their stalwart foe, continued their attempt to talk the Black Mage down, even after it had become obvious that their attempt at negotiation had failed. Meanwhile, the other two players, after begging the first two to help them, instead of continuing the failed deception, fled the room to another, leaving their companions to die alone. Then, as those two bolted through the compound, intent on saving their own lives, the Black Mage used Dimension Door to cut off their escape. And yet another cone of cold rolled over their already wounded bodies. Alas, luck was not with my youngling players that day. And for the next game session, they would all be rolling up new characters to pick up where the old ones had left off. Did I intentionally TPK their characters? Of course not. I would never do that. But it happened, and the game went on. You see, defeat, death, and TPKs are not the end of a game of Dungeons & Dragons. They're just the beginning. And if employed properly, not only can they take your games to the next level, but they can help your players learn to confront and deal with problems in life, how to use creativity and problem solving to get out of a bind, and how not to give up when life deals you a crappy hand and you're just plain screwed. This is Dungeons & Dragons, folks, and it's more than just a game. If you have any questions about this topic or anything else Dungeon Master or D&D related, I have live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around 6 p.m. Eastern US time. So swing on by and let's hang out. Let me know your thoughts on defeat, death, and TPKs in Dungeons & Dragons. Next week, hopefully I'll be talking about something a little more lighthearted, but until then, click right here to hear the story of my very first TPK ever. And until next time, let's play D&D and kill some player characters.